Welcome. I am here today with A-Jay Orr. A-Jay is a veteran, a 3 times award-winning author, founding member of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce for Veterans, and the CEO of SimplePlan-IT. So today he's talking about some digital risk management expert is what he is, with more than 15 years experience in the ever-evolving field of technology and cybersecurity. A-Jay, thank you so much for being here today. How's it going?
It's good, Ted. It's good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. So when this all came about, because I actually contacted A-Jay, an issue that was about a cybersecurity threat that I had in my own life, in my own business. Some of the things maybe didn't quite line up in the end. Now, what happened was that everything seemed to be going well in the beginning. The client reached out to me. I didn't know them prior, but that happens all the time. We get people calling. We say, hey, they want to know information about what we do, and that's fine. And they said, we found you on Google. That checks out too. They contacted us by text message. I believe we exchanged texts. They asked us about a project they wanted to work on, like a website and some other things, which is totally what we do. We said, okay, sure. They wanted a quote. We gave them a quote. We spent a little bit of time putting things together, asked them questions even. It seemed pretty nuanced and advanced, but one of the things that was kind of interesting was that along the way, they were kind of rushing, maybe a little bit, but we're still used to clients rushing. They still it's not totally out of the ordinary. In fact, the client we were working on just prior had a project they wanted done in a week, like a web update and everything. And we did it, and it's one of those things where we rush and we do that stuff. So it wasn't totally out of the blue, but then one of the flags was like the price range was a little high, not too bad. Things lined up okay. But then there was something at the very end. We gave them a proposal. We gave them the price, and we said this, and they said, "Wait a minute, could you do me a favor?" They said something about the language of, "Can you do me a favor?" And I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And they said, "Can you?" And this is where it got really confusing. Maybe A-Jay, you can help me with this, but they basically wanted to use our payment system or pay us, and then we pay another person somehow. And I don't know exactly. It doesn't even make sense to me, but basically they wanted to pay us a certain amount, and then of that we would pay one of their vendors, because they said their vendor didn't have a credit card processor or something. And we were like, this is a little strange. Most customers don't ask this. So what did you get out of it? We reached out to A-Jay. Thank you so much for this, because it was a little strange, but what are your thoughts here, and what did you see when that was around there?
So we've actually seen these types of scams before. And so that's why whenever you reached out, I was like, yeah, this smells just like a normal scam to me on the surface, without even digging into the details and knowing everything that you just went through as far as how the situation came to be. And so what happens in those situations is that they were looking for you to pay somebody else. And they said, hey, we're going to pay you, and we're going to give you a little bit extra, and then you can take a percentage for yourself as a tip, to say thank you for that convenience fee. So you can pad it a little bit for you. You'll keep a little bit extra for yourself, but then send this money to this other person. And so what happens is that everything will look good, and you'll make that payment to that other person, but you won't get the payment. You won't get paid on the back end. And so that's where the challenge is. And in the past, that's what we saw you walking into whenever we looked at this. It was like, oh no, because it sounds good. It doesn't sound good, because and the fact that your gut said, this doesn't feel quite right. Let me ask somebody. I think that's a key thing that I think every business leader should have in them. Trust your gut. If your gut says this just doesn't feel right, then there's probably a reason it doesn't feel right.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, so you work with SimplePlan-IT, and you help people, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, basically do this kind of stuff, cybersecurity. And small business cybersecurity is a big deal. There's a lot of very big statistics that we've kind of seen from 42% experienced a cyber attack in the last year. That's massive. I mean, the level of cyber attacks are quite large and growing, and it seems like 59% of small business owners with no cybersecurity measures in place believe their business is too small to be attacked. So that was one of the stats.
No, I mean, so when we think of that one, 59% of small businesses don't believe that, or believe they're too small to be a target or to be attacked. And I think that's a big one in the sense of we need to understand the psychology of cyber attacks and cyber criminals specifically. While they say everybody, you're too small to be a target, that's true. But what they fail to realize is that the vast majority of cyber attacks are untargeted attacks, looking for any open vulnerability, anything that happens to be a way for them to get in. And so, like I tell people, criminals are equal opportunists. They will allow anybody to be a victim. And so it doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. If I can get 500 from you or 500,000, 500 is 500 and I'll still take it. And so, especially whenever there's very little risk in a sense of getting caught and having to stand for any kind of repercussions. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and I draw the parallel and the comparison to car break-ins. If you talk to a police officer, most car break-ins aren't people smashing windows. It's because the door was unlocked, they pop the handle, and then they get in, they take whatever they can. It's the same thing when it comes to cyber attacks. Most cyber attacks, they're not targeting the businesses per se. Now, there are big organizations where they're targeting, like your Googles, your Amazons, your Teslas of the world. They're targeting those organizations trying to get in. But the vast majority of all these small businesses that are being affected by cyber attacks, they weren't targeting you. It just so happened that you have known vulnerabilities that you didn't know were vulnerabilities, but they did, and they were actually able to find them and exploit them.
Yeah, and in fact, kind of talking that way, 37% of companies hit by ransomware had fewer than 100 employees. There's a significant amount of attacks for these smaller companies, and I can attest to that. I mean, I just went over a story with you that happened. We've had other instances of even like letters in the mail. I mean, it just wherever they can go, from letters in the mail that are like, this is a scam, or this, there's all kinds of things that way, to email phishing attacks and other things. We see it all the time, so we are vigilant, but I can understand how it's tough for small businesses. Like this one was fairly close to us. We gave them information in terms of a proposal. We were talking to them a little while. So there's some sophistication.
How long did that interaction take place between them reaching out to you saying, hey, we're interested in your services, to the point where it got a little fishy and they asked for some crazy stuff on the back end when it came to financing?
Well, I think the thing that was interesting was that maybe they started getting a little impatient at the end on one side. So it was honestly like probably 2 or 3 days. I mean, even like talking over a day for a client, sometimes that can even be a bit like when you're setting up the first proposal in some way for some of the things we do. But for them, in the past, they would just be like, give me a price, that's fine, so quick.
And that's the point that I was trying to make, is that they're changing their tactics. Now they're investing in this. Hey, we're going to invest a day or 2 or 3 days to get the payout, because they know eventually it's going to change, and eventually there's an opportunity for them to get a payout on the back end of this. And so, like you said before, it used to be get in, get out. What can I grab? How can I monetize this in a one strike? Now they're being a little bit more methodical. They're playing okay, how can I read into them? How can I lean into to get them to know, like, and trust me, so that they willingly give me these things? Mm-hmm. And so it's a shift in psychology and the way criminals are approaching things that business leaders need to be aware of. Is that it's no longer just the random, hey, I'm the prince in Africa that's going to send you $1 million. Do this for me. Mm-hmm. Those types of attacks are easy to spot, but now they're getting way more sophisticated with their attack vectors and their attack approach, rather.
It is. I mean, it says 51% of small businesses fall victim to ransomware. They pay the money. So This is hitting a lot of people. And over the holidays especially, there's a lot happening. I mean, it seems like every year over this time, from Giving Tuesday on into December, people are giving money. 1/3 of small businesses with 50 or fewer employees rely on free consumer-grade cybersecurity solutions. So is that a problem per se?
It's also a challenge because once again, criminals are treating this as a business because it is big business for them. In 2020 alone, cybercrime was a $1.5 trillion industry. So that's, think about that. $1.5 trillion was stolen through digital espionage, whether that's stealing intellectual property, whether that's ransomware attacks, but $1.5 trillion. I read a statistic that's more than all sales of all the illicit drugs or illegal drugs across the globe. It trumps that in cybercrime. And so they're treating it like a business. And so therefore, as business leaders, we need to understand that and approach cybersecurity and protect our businesses and give it the credence that it needs. And so using free tools, while it is cost effective and sometimes you think it's better than nothing, because they're free tools, the other thing that we have to look at and consider in this war against cybercrime is that every tool and resource that we have at our disposal to protect ourselves, they also have at their disposal to play against and try to figure out all the different ways that they can circumvent it. And so if you're talking about free software where there's no vetting of making sure that the person who's purchasing this or using this is a legitimate person that has good intentions or runs a business, free software, anybody can download that. So think of how many different ways and how much time that they have to play around to try to figure out different ways to get around those defenses. And so those are things. It's just a shift in mindset that I think needs to happen when it comes to how business leaders approach cybersecurity, or at least how they look at it from within their business.
It seems a little bit grim in some ways, but for those of us who have employees who have sensitive client data, what are we supposed to do?
So I think the biggest thing is educating your employees on what the true threats are. Right now, we're, as you kind of alluded to and touched on earlier, we're in peak season when it comes to cyber criminal activity because we're in the holidays. So during the holiday season, we're all getting bombarded with ads, whether that's, hey, this Black Friday sales going on, Cyber Monday sales going on, Amazon this, Target this, all these major brands are pushing out content because they want you to come and shop with them. And so criminals have gotten very good at mimicking those behaviors and mimicking what those outreach and advertising pieces look like. And so we have to be vigilant and do our due diligence and just slow down just a little bit. Have what I call a healthy skepticism whenever we're getting things and when we're receiving things, because now it's not even just through email, they're getting it through text messages. And so educating your people, so teach them how to better protect themselves so they can in turn do a better job of protecting your business. And so I think that's where it starts. And then just being aware of the different types of ways that criminals tend to attack people. Like I said, email, text messages, and just take extra second before you start clicking on things. I would say that would be the first place I start. And then after that, it's just doing healthy habits. Like, when you're out shopping, don't connect to public Wi-Fi because those are easy to spoof, is what they say. So create a copy and make it look like it's a legitimate public Wi-Fi for whatever establishment you're at, but it could be a fake one, and then you're giving credentials and things of that nature. The other thing I would say is whenever you're out shopping, or making big purchases, because a lot of businesses are making big purchases at the end of the year, shop and do things with credit cards rather than debit cards, especially for my small business owners out there. When you think about it, credit card is money that you have access to. It's money that's available to you. Your debit card is actually your cash flow. And so if your debit card gets compromised and a criminal goes in and takes all your money out, that has a dramatic impact on your cash flow and your ability to pay bills. Whereas if your credit card is compromised, that's just money that's available to you. And credit card companies do a really good job as far as helping to defend against fraud and things of that nature. And so I think those are some of the key things that I think we can walk away with and do to start protecting ourselves in this tough time.
We could talk about any trends, or if there's some types of scam attacks that people should be on the lookout for that maybe you've seen in the past.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, like right now is, all of the notifications that come from UPS, FedEx. Just be careful and just look at it thoroughly before you click on any links there, because like I said, we're in the peak season where ads are coming through. I've seen ads. Well, I've seen fake emails that come through that I swear were coming directly from Amazon. I mean, they were so legit
Mm-hmm.
looking. But there are
Yeah.
different things that you need to look at in your emails. There's like 7 different things that you need to pay attention to when you're analyzing an email. And there's a tool that I'm more than happy to share with you that you can share with everybody else, Ted, that kind of walks through the 7 different things and how to break down an email real quick. And I think if we can start just going through creating these healthy habits to where we're looking at things before we click and just assuming that, okay, this came from my bank. Let me click on this because this doesn't sound right or this doesn't seem right. Yeah, if we can just develop those healthy habits where we become, like I said, create a healthy skepticism where we look at things just slightly before we click and act, then I think that's how we start to curve these numbers when it comes to the number of small businesses being victims of cyber crimes and cyber attacks.
Yeah, I mean, anything we can do would be greatly helpful. I mean, for sure. So we'll definitely include the social engineering red flags for emails that you're so graciously giving to everyone here. So what are the 5 things businesses can do to protect themselves?
Once again, email and text messages are where criminals are coming through at. It's the easiest way to socially engineer. When you think of a cyber crime or cyber attack, it's much easier for me to trick a person into doing something than it is for me to circumvent the security systems that you have in place. And so your people are always going to be the weakest link in any cybersecurity strategy. So educating them, which is number 2, educate your employees on what they should be watching out for. Like one of the things that we've noticed recently, and I say within the past year or so, is being careful where you get USB cables from. Because we've seen criminals weaponize USB cables where if you buy them from a third party, or be careful where you're buying things like this from Amazon, because they're infecting the wires with viruses and malware that as soon as you plug it into your system, it now gives them access to your computer, and then they have a back door and you didn't even realize it, and then they get in and do their things from there. And so just understanding how the attack vectors are changing and the different tactics that criminals are using is important, not only for the individual, but to make sure that your staff is aware of that as well. The third thing, once again, going back to when you're out, and this is when you're shopping or during non-peak times, during just good habits, just be leery of public Wi-Fi. Because one, it's not secure. So anybody on there that has any kind of technical skills can see what's going on those networks. And at the same time, it's very easy for them to mimic that network and get you to connect to one of their devices. And then they're able to capture information that you're entering in. The fourth thing that I would say, once again, when you're out, use credit cards, not debit cards. This is good all year round, not just during the holiday seasons, because of the protection of cash flow. And then the fifth thing I would say is just make sure that your security systems are up to date. And we talked about it a little bit before about using free stuff. I would just say just be leery of all the free things. I understand as a business owner that cash flow is important and you have to invest every dollar, make sure that you're getting some sort of return on investment. But I would caution you to say, let's not look at cybersecurity as a cost center or a sunk cost. And it's really more of it's an effort in managing your digital risk, because criminals aren't after your computers, they're after your digital assets, your financials, your intellectual property, your client data, your employee data. That's what they're after. It just exists in a digital format. And so any way that they can get to it is what they're trying to do. And so let's approach it from how are we managing our digital risk rather than looking at it as an IT sunk cost and be like, I get no return on this investment, because really you're protecting yourself and hedging and mitigating your risk, the better you do. So just make sure that you've got good systems in place and that you're keeping those up to date.
These are some amazing tips, and thank you so much. I mean, it's just so ironic that we have, firewalls and security, we have cameras, we have all this stuff, and yet the scam that came through was literally somebody basically just asking, give me this. And we were almost like, okay, because, we thought they were like a client, so they didn't need the camera. They didn't have to go through the front door. We were just like about to give them something. It's amazing.
And like I said, from a criminal's perspective, it's much easier for me as a criminal to trick you into doing something and give me something than it is for me to get past all of the security systems that you put in place. And so that's why educating your employees and educating yourself is of the utmost importance.
Incredible. Thank you, A-Jay, so much. We have a free resource that everyone can check out, the social engineering red flags that A-Jay is giving. So do get that and like this video. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, A-Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.